I'll never forget that crisp autumn morning in 2018. The kind where the leaves crunch under your feet like nature's own confetti, and the air smells like pumpkin spice from the coffee shop down the block. I was in my cozy kitchen in our modest split-level home in Maplewood, Minnesota. A suburb so picture-perfect it could have been plucked from a Hallmark movie, with neighbors waving over white picket fences and kids biking to school without a care. My hands were wrapped around a steaming mug of Folgers, staring out the window at the red maple tree we'd planted when our son was born. When the doorbell rang, it was my best friend Carla, standing there in her yoga pants and oversized hoodie, her face pale as a ghost. She didn't wait for me to invite her in. She just pushed past me, collapsed onto the bar stool at the island, and burst into tears. "Karen," she choked out between sobs, "I'm pregnant. And it's David's." David, my husband. The man I'd built a life with for 28 years. The father of our only child. In that instant, my mug slipped from my fingers, shattering on the tile floor, coffee splashing everywhere like the blood draining from my heart. How do you even begin to wrap your head around that? Your closest confidant, the woman who'd held your hand through miscarriages and milestones, carrying the baby of the man who'd vowed to love you forever in that little Lutheran church downtown. It all goes back to the beginning, I suppose, when life felt like it was on a steady track, chugging along without too many bumps. David and I met in high school, at Maplewood Senior High, back in the late 80s. He was the lanky kid on the wrestling team with a shy grin and a part-time job bagging groceries at the local Cub Foods, and I was the bookish girl in the debate club, dreaming of becoming a teacher. We dated through senior year, went to prom in his dad's old Chevy pickup, and got married right after community college because that's what you did in towns like ours. Settled down, started roots. Our son Alex arrived 2 years later, a squirmy bundle with David's dark hair and my hazel eyes. We bought this house on Oak Lane for $150,000, a steal even then, with a big backyard for barbecues and a basement we turned into a playroom. David worked his way up at the auto repair shop on the edge of town, the one with the neon sign that flickered during storms, coming home with oil stains on his jeans and stories about cranky customers. I got my teaching certificate and started at the elementary school, grading papers at the kitchen table, while Alex played with his Legos on the living room rug. Those early years were full of the little things that make a family hum. Weekends meant trips to the Target in the next town over for school supplies and snacks, loading up the cart with goldfish crackers and juice boxes. Holidays were magical. Thanksgiving with turkey from the butcher, and pies I baked from scratch, the house smelling like cinnamon and sage as relatives crammed around our extendable dining table. Christmas mornings, Alex would wake us at dawn, tearing into presents under the artificial tree we'd decorated with handmade ornaments from his kindergarten class. We'd sip hot cocoa from mismatched mugs, watching him assemble his new train set while snow blanketed the yard outside. Neighbors like the Johnsons next door were like extended family. Mrs. Johnson would bring over zucchini bread from her garden, and we'd swap tips on dealing with the pesky squirrels that raided our bird feeders. David and I had our share of squabbles, over bills piling up on the counter or who forgot to unload the dishwasher. But we always kissed goodnight, whispering, "I love you," in the dark of our queen-sized bed with the quilt my mom had sewn. Alex was the light of our lives, a curious kid who loved building forts in the backyard with old blankets and sticks from the woods behind our house. He'd come running in with muddy knees shouting, "Mom, look what I made!" And I'd pretend to be amazed every time. School days were routine. I'd drop him off at Maplewood Elementary on my way to work, waving as he joined the line of kids filing in with backpacks bigger than they were. He excelled in math and science, always entering the science fair with projects like volcanoes made from baking soda or solar system models hung from coat hangers. David would help him late into the night, tools scattered on the garage workbench, while I packed lunches, peanut butter sandwiches on Wonder Bread, an apple from the orchard we visited every fall, and a note saying, "Have a great day." Summers meant family vacations to the cabin up north on Lake Superior, where we'd fish off the dock, roast marshmallows over campfires, and tell ghost stories under the stars. Life wasn't glamorous, but it was ours, grounded in the rhythms of small-town America. Friday night pizza from Domino's, Saturday errands to the hardware store for light bulbs and paint, Sunday services at church followed by brunch at the diner where the waitress knew our orders by heart. As Alex grew into his teens, cracks started showing, subtle at first, like hairline fractures in a foundation. He hit puberty hard, moody and withdrawn, slamming his bedroom door after arguments about curfew or homework. "You don't get it, Mom," he'd snap when I asked why he was spending so much time on his computer, coding games instead of hanging out with friends. David and I fought more too, about money mostly. The auto shop wasn't paying as well with the economy dipping, and my teacher's salary barely covered the rising costs of groceries at Aldi or gas for our aging Ford Explorer. We'd sit at the kitchen table after Alex went to bed, bills spread out like a bad hand of cards, whispering so he wouldn't hear. "We'll figure it out," David would say, squeezing my hand, but his eyes looked worried, lines etching deeper around them. Neighbors noticed. At block parties, folks would ask if everything was okay, and I'd smile and say, "Just the usual ups and downs." Carla entered our lives around then, moving into the split level across the street after her messy divorce from a guy in St. Paul. She was bubbly, with a laugh that carried across the cul-de-sac, and worked as a nurse at the local clinic, bandaging scraped knees and giving flu shots. We bonded over coffee on her porch swing, sharing stories about our kids. Her daughter was Alex's age, in the same grade, and venting about work. "Karen, you're a saint for dealing with those little monsters all day," she'd tease, and I'd laugh, feeling seen. David liked her too. They'd chat when he mowed the lawn or shoveled snow, joking about the Vikings' latest loss. Soon we were doing double dates, dinners at Applebee's, where we'd split appetizers and talk politics over half-price apps, or movie nights in our basement with popcorn from the microwave and blankets piled on the sectional. High school flew by for Alex. He graduated top of his class, giving a speech at the ceremony in the school gym that had me tearing up in the bleachers. We threw a party in the backyard, grilling burgers and hot dogs, with a sheet cake from Costco that said "Congrats, Alex," in blue icing. He got into the University of Minnesota for computer engineering, a full-ride scholarship that eased our financial worries a bit. Dropping him off at the dorms in Minneapolis that August was bittersweet. I hugged him tight in the parking lot, whispering, "Call me anytime," while David loaded boxes into the elevator. At first, he did call every weekend, telling stories about frat parties and late-night study sessions in the library. But as semesters passed, the calls dwindled to texts. "Busy with projects, Mom. Lof ja." That's when David started pulling away, or maybe I did. Our evenings became routine. Him watching ESPN on the couch with a beer from the fridge, me grading papers at the desk. In the spare room, sex felt like a chore, hurried and mechanical under the covers. "What's wrong?" I'd ask, and he'd mutter, "Nothing, just tired from work." I confided in Carla over walks around the neighborhood park, where kids played on the swings and dogs chased frisbees. "Marriage is hard after the kids leave," she'd say sympathetically, linking her arm with mine. Little did I know she was the reason for some of his late nights at the shop. Alex's big success hit like a lightning bolt his junior year. He and some dorm buddies developed an app for organizing group projects, something colleges desperately needed. It went viral on campus, then nationwide, downloaded by thousands. By graduation, tech companies were courting him, and he sold the app for millions, 8 figures, the news said. Maplewood buzzed. Folks at the grocery store stopped me in the frozen foods aisle. "Karen, your boy's set for life. What's he planning?" I'd beam, saying, "Oh, he's got big ideas," but inside, I hoped he'd remember us. He came home that summer in a sleek Audi, treating us to dinner at the nicest restaurant in town, the one with cloth napkins and a wine list. "Mom, Dad, this is just the start," he said, clinking glasses. We laughed, toasting to the future, as fireflies danced in the yard that night. But the visits tapered off. He moved to Silicon Valley for a startup job, calls becoming emails about his fancy apartment overlooking the bay, and networking events with CEOs. Holidays without him stung. Easter brunch with just David and me. The ham too big for 2, leftovers spoiling in the fridge. 4th of July barbecues felt empty without his fireworks stories. "He's building his empire," David would say, but his voice held a note of sadness. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling fan whirring above, wondering if I'd failed as a mom, if I should have pushed him more to stay connected. Texts went unanswered for days. "Miss you, Alex. Call soon." Nothing. The abandonment crept in slow. a quiet ache that grew with each silent phone. Meanwhile, my friendship with Carla was my lifeline. We'd shop at the mall on Saturdays, trying on clothes at Kohl's and gossiping about town drama. The mayor's scandal, the new Starbucks opening. David joined sometimes, the three of us laughing over lunch at Panera. I never saw the glances they exchanged, the texts flying when I wasn't looking. Signs were there. David's sudden interest in jogging, coming home sweaty and evasive. Carla's vague stories about dates that never materialized. But trust blinds you, especially in a town where everyone's business is shared over fence lines. The emotional build was agonizing, a pressure cooker simmering. David and I argued over trivial things, the thermostat set too high, who left the garage light on. One night, after a silent dinner of takeout Chinese from the place on the corner, I snapped. "Do you even want to be here anymore?" He looked away mumbling, "Of course," but his hug felt hollow. I cried in the shower, hot water mixing with tears, thinking of the young couple we used to be. Alex's absence amplified it. I'd scroll his Instagram, seeing him at galas in suits that cost more than our mortgage payment, liking posts but never commenting back. Then came Carla's bombshell that autumn morning. After the mug shattered, I stood there numb as she spilled it all. The affair starting a year ago after a neighborhood bonfire. Stolen moments in her car or at motels on the highway. It was a mistake, Karen. We ended it, but then the pregnancy. My mind raced. The baby bump I'd noticed but chalked up to weight gain, David's business trips. Betrayal hit like waves, each one knocking me down. I confronted David that evening, as he hung his keys on the hook by the door. "Carla's pregnant. With your child." He crumpled, admitting everything, loneliness, midlife doubts, how Carla made him feel young again. "I love you, Karen. It was stupid." Excuses poured out, but they rang empty. I made him leave, watching him drive away in his truck, taillights fading down the street. Secrets unraveled like a pulled thread. Going through his emails on our shared computer, I found years of messages, flirty to passionate. They'd planned getaways disguised as work. And Alex? A bank statement showed he'd sent money to David secretly, for investments, without telling me. Why? Did he know? The thought twisted the knife. The breakdown came on a stormy November night, thunder shaking the house as I paced the empty rooms. Alex hadn't responded to my frantic texts about the split. Carla es apologiront. I collapsed on the floor, sobbing until I couldn't breathe, questioning everything. My worth, my life. Pills from the medicine cabinet tempted me, but a photo of Alex as a baby stopped me. I called a crisis line instead, whispering my despair to a kind voice. Healing started small. Therapy at the community center, sessions in a circle of chairs with other broken souls. I quit teaching temporarily, using savings for online courses in writing. A dream deferred. Walks in the snowy park cleared my head, thoughts untangling with each step. Letters to Alex poured out my pain. At first silence, but I persisted. Carla had the baby in spring, a girl named Sophie. She begged forgiveness. I visited, holding the infant, feeling a mix of rage and pity. "We're both flawed," she said. David sought counseling, owning his mistakes in tearful talks at the coffee shop. The life-changing shift happened when Alex flew home unannounced, his empire crumbling under fraud allegations. "Mom, I was scared," he confessed on the porch, rain pattering. Success isolated me. We rebuilt, family therapy, awkward dinners including Sophie. David and I divorced but co-parented amicably. Alex started a local nonprofit, mentoring kids. In the end, scars remain but we're stronger. The lesson? Wealth and secrets erode foundations, but forgiveness and presence rebuild them. Cherish connections. They're the true riches in this unpredictable life. That first winter after everything blew up was the coldest I'd ever felt. And it had nothing to do with the Minnesota weather. December rolled in with a foot of snow overnight, the kind that shuts schools and makes the plows rumble down Oak Lane every few hours, scraping the road clean. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. to the sound of them, lie there in the dark, and feel this hollow ache in my chest that no extra blanket could fix. The house was too quiet without David's snoring beside me or Alex's late-night footsteps padding to the kitchen for cereal. I'd walk downstairs in my robe and slippers, make a pot of coffee that was way too much for one person, and sit at the island staring at the Christmas tree I hadn't bothered to decorate. The boxes of ornaments stayed stacked in the basement, gathering dust next to Alex's old hockey gear, and the artificial garland we used to wrap around the staircase every year. I kept teaching because quitting felt like letting the betrayal win. Third graders don't care if your heart is broken. They still need help tying shoes and sounding out words. I'd stand at the whiteboard writing sight words like family and friend, and feel this twist in my gut every single time. Parents at pickup would give me sympathetic smiles, the kind that say they know but won't bring it up. Maplewood is small enough that word travels fast. By January, everybody knew David had moved into the apartment above the tire shop on County Road 10, that Carla was expecting in May, and that Alex hadn't come home for Christmas. People meant well, but the casseroles and thinking of you cards piling up on the counter just reminded me how alone I really was. David tried calling every few days. The first few times I let it ring through to voicemail. When I finally picked up in late January, his voice sounded small. "Karen, can we talk? Just coffee, please." We met at the Caribou Coffee on the edge of town, the one with the drive-thru that's always packed in the mornings. He looked older, like the last few months had added 10 years, gray stubble, bags under his eyes, wearing the same Carhartt jacket he'd had since Alex was in middle school. We sat in a corner booth with our lattes getting cold between us. He apologized again, eyes wet, telling me how stupid he'd been, how he missed me every day. I listened, arms crossed, heart guarded. "You didn't just cheat on me, David. You let Carla carry your child while I was right across the street planning potlucks and playdates." He had no defense for that. We agreed to try counseling, but it felt more like obligation than hope. Carla kept a low profile through the winter. I'd see her car in the driveway, curtains drawn most days. Once in February, I ran into her at Target. I was in the Valentine's aisle picking up discounted candy for my classroom party when I turned the corner. And there she was, hand resting on her growing belly, looking at baby onesies. Our eyes met and the air froze. She started to say something, but I just pushed my cart past her, heart pounding. That night I cried in the bathtub until the water went cold. Alex's silence hurt worst of all. I sent him long emails, pouring out how scared I was, how much I needed him. He'd reply with short texts. "I'm sorry, Mom. Work is insane. I'll call soon." Soon never came. In March, his company announced a huge new funding round on TechCrunch. There were pictures of him at a gala in San Francisco, arm around some beautiful investor in a red dress, smiling like he didn't have a care in the world. I stared at that photo for an hour, zooming in on his face, trying to find the boy who used to beg me to read him one more chapter of Harry Potter. He looked like a stranger. Spring thawed slowly that year. The snow melted into muddy yards. And the robins came back to the bird feeder David had built years ago. I started walking every evening after dinner, looping through the neighborhood, waving at neighbors grilling on their decks or washing cars in driveways. The routine kept me sane. One April afternoon, I was lacing up my sneakers when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Carla standing there, 7 months pregnant, holding a small white box from the bakery downtown. "Can I come in for a minute?" she asked quietly. I hesitated, then stepped aside. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where we'd planned block parties and cried over glasses of wine when her divorce went through. She slid the box across to me. Inside was a single slice of my favorite lemon raspberry cake. "I know this doesn't fix anything," she started, voice shaking. "But I needed to say it in person. I destroyed the best friendship I've ever had. I destroyed your family. And I hate myself for it every single day." Tears rolled down her cheeks. She told me how the affair started innocently enough. David helping her fix a leaky faucet while I was at a parent-teacher conference. Talking turning to flirting turning to something neither of them stopped. "We were both lonely," she said. "But that's no excuse." I didn't absolve her. I couldn't yet. But I listened. And when she left, I ate that cake slice alone at the table and cried for all of us. Sophie was born on a warm May morning. Carla texted me from the hospital. "She's here. 7 pounds 2 ounces. Healthy." Attached was a picture of a tiny pink face with a shock of dark hair. I stared at it for a long time, feeling this strange mix of anger and tenderness. A week later, David brought her over for the first time. He stood awkwardly in the doorway holding the car seat. "Do you want to meet her?" he asked. I nodded. She was perfect. Tiny fingers, rosebud mouth. I held her while David watched, both of us crying quietly. "She has your nose," I whispered. It didn't make the betrayal disappear, but it made it more complicated. Summer brought the turning point none of us saw coming. In June, news broke that Alex's company was under federal investigation for misleading investors about revenue numbers. The stock plunged. Reporters camped outside his San Francisco office. His name was all over CNBC and Bloomberg. Our boy, the local kid who made good, now the face of a potential scandal. He stopped posting on social media entirely. Then one humid night in July, my phone rang at midnight. It was him. "Mom," he said, and his voice broke on the single word. "Can I come home?" He arrived 2 days later looking like he hadn't slept in weeks, unshaven, eyes red, wearing wrinkled clothes that didn't fit right. We sat on the back deck until dawn while he told me everything. The pressure to keep growing, the lies he'd told himself and others to keep the illusion going. How terrified he was of failing and losing everything. "I thought if I just stayed away, you wouldn't have to see me fall apart," he said. "But I was wrong. I needed you guys more than ever, and I pushed you away." I held him while he cried like he was 10 years old again, scared of a thunderstorm. He stayed. Sold the Audi, moved into his old bedroom with the faded Star Wars posters still on the walls. Started driving for Uber to make ends meet while cooperating with investigators. David came over most evenings. Awkward at first, then easier. The three of us would sit around the fire pit in the backyard roasting marshmallows, talking about everything and nothing. Alex met Sophie for the first time in August, holding her carefully like she might break. "She's my sister," he said softly, looking at me with tears in his eyes. Half-sister, but still. Something shifted in him that day. Fall turned to winter again, but this one felt different that we decorated the tree together. David, Alex, and me. Pulling ornaments from the boxes that had sat untouched for 2 years. Alex hung the one he'd made in preschool, a popsicle stick star with glitter that still shed everywhere. David and I finalized the divorce in November, quiet and sad but not bitter. We agreed to split holidays, to be civil for the kids and the grandbaby who was coming into both our lives. Carla and I never went back to what we were, but we found a new normal. She'd bring Sophie over on Saturday mornings for coffee while Alex played with her on the living room floor. We'd talk about parenting and work and the weather, careful around the sharp edges but present all the same. Forgiveness wasn't a moment. It was 1,000 small choices to keep showing up. These days, Alex runs a small coding boot camp out of the community center downtown, teaching local kids, many from families like ours, who dream of building something bigger. David still works at the shop, but he coaches Sophie's tiny tot soccer team on weekends. I went back to teaching 3rd grade this year, and every morning when I write family on the board, it doesn't hurt the same way. The lesson I carry now, the one carved deep into my bones after all this pain, is simple but hard one. Money and success can buy a lot of things, but they can't buy presents. They can't buy the choice to stay when everything falls apart. People will hurt you, sometimes the ones you love most. They'll lie, they'll leave, they'll choose the wrong thing in a moment of weakness. But some of them will come back. Some of them will sit in the ashes with you and help rebuild something new. Hold space for that possibility. Forgive when you can, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. And never stop showing up for the people who matter, because in the end, that's the only wealth that lasts. Time kept moving forward, the way it always does, even when you feel stuck in one heartbreaking moment. By the spring of 2021, Sophie was turning 2, toddling around on chubby legs with David's dark curls and a smile that could melt even the frostiest parts of my heart. Alex's legal troubles had mostly resolved. He hadn't been the one cooking the books, just a young CEO who trusted the wrong people. The company survived, smaller and humbler, and he stayed in Maplewood, renting a little apartment above the new brewery downtown. He'd drive over most evenings, parking his sensible used Honda Civic in the driveway instead of the flashy cars he used to favor, and we'd cook dinner together like we were making up for all the years we'd lost. Some nights David joined us too, the three of us chopping vegetables at the island, talking about work or the twins' latest game. careful not to step on the landmines still buried in our history. I started dating again that year, cautiously. A widower named Tom from church asked me to coffee after the spring cleanup day. He taught history at the middle school, had kind eyes and a gentle laugh, and didn't push when I told him I wasn't ready for anything serious. We'd meet at the lakeside park on Sunday afternoons, walking the paved trail while geese honked overhead and kids fished off the dock. It felt strange at first, sitting across from someone new, talking about books and gardening instead of 28 years of shared memories. But it also felt like breathing fresh air after being underwater too long. Carla and I settled into an uneasy but functional coexistence. She'd text me photos of Sophie's first day of preschool, or ask if I wanted to meet at the playground so the kids could play. I'd go, pushing Sophie on the swings while Carla watched from a bench. Both of us quiet about the past but present for the little girl who tied us together. One warm September afternoon in 2022, Sophie ran up to me with a dandelion puff in her fist and said, "Gamma care and blow." Clear as day. Carla's eyes filled with tears, and so did mine. I knelt down, took the dandelion, and blew the seeds into the wind while Sophie squealed with delight. In that moment, I realized some bonds form in spite of pain, not because of its absence. Alex met someone too, a quiet software developer named Mia who'd grown up in a small town in Wisconsin. She came home with him for Thanksgiving that year, helping me peel potatoes and set the table without making a fuss. When we sat down to eat, the dining room felt fuller than it had in years. Alex and Mia, David, Tom, who I'd invited as a friend, and even Carla with Sophie in a booster seat smearing mashed potatoes on her tray. We went around the table saying what we were thankful for, the way we always had when Alex was little. When it got to me, I looked at each face, some scarred by betrayal, some new and hopeful, and said, "I'm thankful we're all here, choosing to keep showing up." Nobody spoke for a second, and then Sophie banged her spoon and yelled turkey. And we all laughed until our eyes were wet. Years slipped by like that, one ordinary day after another stitching the wounds closed. By Christmas 2024, Alex and Mia were engaged, planning a small wedding at the Lake Pavilion next summer. Sophie was 6, missing her 2 front teeth and obsessed with soccer, calling both me and Carla grandma, depending on whose house she was at. David had started dating a widow from his bowling league, a sweet woman named Diane who baked amazing cinnamon rolls. Tom and I never became more than close friends. He moved to Arizona to be near his daughter, but we still exchange postcards and laugh about old times when he visits. This past Christmas Eve we all gathered here at the house on Oak Lane. The tree was lit up with the same ornaments we'd collected over decades, plus new ones Sophie had made at school. Alex and Mia strung lights on the porch while David and Diane hung the wreath on the door. Carla arrived with a tray of her famous 7-layer bars, Sophie bursting in behind her with a plate of cookies she'd decorated herself. Mostly frosting and sprinkles, barely any cookie visible. We ate too much, played board games until midnight, and sang carols off-key around the piano that nobody really knew how to play anymore. Later, after everyone had gone home and the house was quiet again, I stood at the kitchen sink washing the last of the dishes, looking out at the snow falling soft and steady over the backyard. The red maple we'd planted when Alex was born stood tall against the night sky, branches heavy with white. I thought about that autumn morning in 2018 when my world fell apart with one confession, about the years of silence and pain and slow, stubborn rebuilding that followed. And I realized something that's taken me all this time to fully understand. Families aren't perfect pictures framed on the wall. They're living, breathing things, messy and fractured and capable of breaking in ways you never imagined. But they're also capable of healing in ways you never expected, if you're willing to stay at the table, to keep choosing each other even when it's hard, even when you've been hurt beyond words. The real treasure was never Alex's millions or the life David and I thought we'd locked in forever. It was this: the quiet courage to forgive, the daily decision to show up, the grace to make room for new people and new versions of old ones. Money comes and goes. Success rises and falls. But love, the kind that survives betrayal, abandonment, and time itself, that's the only thing that truly endures. So if you're listening to this and you're in the middle of your own heartbreak, feeling like your family is shattered beyond repair, hear me when I say, hold on. Keep choosing the hard conversations, the awkward holidays, The small acts of kindness even when you don't feel like it. Because one day, years from now, you might find yourself standing at a sink full of dishes on a snowy Christmas night, looking out at a yard full of memories both painful and beautiful, and realize that somehow, against all odds, you built something even stronger out of the broken pieces. That's the miracle I'm living now. And it's worth every tear it took to get here.